You mentioned that Congress has done quite a bit. You mentioned correctly that you don't do taxes and spending, Congress does, but everyone, including members of Congress, look to you for advice. In your judgment, do we have to do a lot more on the fiscal policy front to respond to this crisis? $54 billion to backstop Fed emergency lending. If I did my arithmetic right, today you used 195 billion of that for the various programs you announced this morning. What are your priorities for the rest of that money? How do you think about? There is, I think, a consensus that one mistake made during the global financial crisis a decade ago was that banks were allowed to deplete their capital by paying dividends for too long. Now, several big banks have voluntarily suspended stock buybacks to preserve their capital. I'm curious why it hasn't suggested. One of the things that distinguishes this period, which is pretty extraordinary, is what's going on in the mortgage market. We've seen a sharp spike in delinquencies. It's hard for people to buy. It's even hard for people to refinance mortgages. There's questions about the mortgage servicers. Do you think there's steps that need to be taken now by the government, broadly defined, to make sure that a mortgage crisis doesn't make the economic recovery slower than need be? Chair Powell, I understand that a few minutes ago, the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, said he thought the U.S. economy might be ready to reopen by the end of May, as soon as the president feels comfortable with the public health stuff. Does that seem right? A number of people have asked whether you think you'll rely on a cap on short-term interest rates, a yield curve control kind of thing, when we come out of this thing. Have you considered that?
So we, of course, we've done a lot of thinking.
Are you at all worried about the Federal Reserve, which is, after all, unelected officials making decisions about who can borrow and who can, and what credit rating is eligible for your loans and where you're not going to lend? And finally, I wonder if you could speculate a little bit about how the economy will be different when we come out of this. We'll have a lot more debt, that's for sure. Do you think that we'll be saving more? Do you think our way of life will change? Do you have thoughts on that? And I think a lot of people are scared now. This is not something that any of us have lived through in our lifetimes, a pandemic like this that's caused the economy to stop and people will be afraid of interacting with their neighbors. I think people want to know that our leaders, people like you, are confident that we can get through this. So I want to give you this opportunity to, if you like, to reassure people about what lies ahead. Well, as they say, from your lips to God's ears. Chairman Jay Powell, thank you very much for your time today. I thank everybody for watching and the very good questions we received. And we wish you all a very safe next few weeks as you continue the important job of steering our economy through this terrible storm.
They haven't stopped dividends, and they haven't stopped dividends, and they haven't stopped dividends, and